in what it was before the Recuerda Cesar Chavez Committee, but now we have changed the name to the New Mexico Si Se Puede Committee. So this Saturday, April 25th, from 10 in the morning to 1 p.m. in the Rangers Market, we're going to have a beautiful event of advocacy, where you're going to be able to give your voice, participate with community members, where you're going to bring your children, and there are going to be so many activities for them. Resource vendors, food trucks, and at the same time, a lot of performances that are part of our culture in New Mexico. So you are more than invited to come and participate, give your voice, and enjoy a beautiful event with the voice still of Dolores that is not going to be able to accompany us this time around because of these circumstances, and she's 96 years old. So this year she's not going to be able to do it in person, but she's going to have a video with a beautiful message for all of you. So come and join us. This is not specific for Hispanics, it's for everyone. So I see you there.
Thank you, Beatrice. She has some lovely flyers here on this event at the rail yard. So if you want to take a flyer, she'll circulate those around in the audience for you. They're beautiful. It was in the newsletter too. Willie tells me it was in the newsletter. And we should have it again in the newsletter because the event's Saturday. So it's that day. You want to, okay, Sandy wants to say something real quick about postcards.
Thank you. So you know that we're working on Back Off Blackstone, and y'all filled out these postcards. Well, yeah, that's right, Back Off Blackstone. So anyway, we had a whole bunch more people that filled them out, and now I need to get them in the mail. So if you don't, so what I need is for people to be willing to take about 10 of these each, put them in their mailbox on Wednesday. That's all you have to do. Great. So that's exactly what I need you to do, is to raise your hand, and I'm going to come around while people are talking, and I will hand you out these postcards. Thanks so much. Any questions about that? But the postage is on them. They're written out by everybody else. I collected them all through the city, but I wanted to put the postage on myself and make sure they got in. So that's why we're doing it this way. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, Sandy, for all that work. Okay, now we're going to have Elise Flanagan-Taylor come up for a few minutes and tell us she's running for New Mexico House District 23, and she's going to introduce herself.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Thank you. Hi, how you doing, sir? Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm Elise Flanagan-Taylor. And thank you. And I am running for New Mexico State House District 23 in Rio Rancho, Sandoval County. Exactly. I've lived in New York, California, and now I live here, and I love New Mexico. And my husband and I own a home, and we are not leaving. So we want it blue. Trust me. Don't have to worry about that one. Okay, so district. Next slide, please. Oh, I don't know. That might be a third thing. Okay. All participation is helpful and welcomed. For some reason, maybe it's my Italian-American side, but I think this looks like Italy a little bit. So, right? Just a little. It's like maybe like on its side. Okay. So my district starts up at the 550, as you can see here, and it crosses. Like we hover over the 528. And at Adalia Road, that's when it jumps over to the west side of the 528. It's huge. It took me 2 hours with one of my friends to just do this whole thing. Of course, we're going slow, but went all the way down Adalia and 528, down to Northern. Well, I guess we kind of skipped over to Northern. Unser, yep, that's exactly it. You got it. Unser, and a little bit on Southern Boulevard. Unfortunately, they skipped over all the good restaurants, so lots of houses. But it's a beautiful place up there. We have a great view. And I'll start by telling a little bit about me. I'm a film and television actress, professional actress. Thank you. Since I was 5 years old, so you can do the math and look it up. And I'm also a professional gig worker, full-time, since 2010, essentially. I first got interested in politics when we moved to New Mexico And someone encouraged me to run for my union to become a leader. I am pro-union. It was my dream to be in my union. You know, the big film and television union? I am the first VP, and I'm proud to serve all our members. Thank you. My husband's also an IATSE 600 cinematographer, so we are a union family. Thank you. The first time I got into politics, besides being a union leader, was when I started during COVID, when we had to stay home, I decided to become a licensed insurance agent. And I got to work with Medicare members, which I loved, and that's what I wanted to do. And we were selling Medicare Advantage plans, but I loved talking to all the members. It was so interesting, finding out so much about them, what worked for them during retirement, what didn't, of course, going through their medications. I learned a lot. Went back to the film industry, and we've continued going, but it slowed down a couple years later, and I got a job at the Roundhouse. So excited. Representative Herndon and Representative Matthews are the two legislators that I work for. 2 sessions now. I love working there. It is so fun, so exciting. Like political theater, it's really fun. So we enjoy it. But most importantly, I got to figure out how bills get made, how things get done. And that is really important to me. Where the process holds good legislators and legislation back, and honestly, where the process lets people down. I talk to all the constituents when they come in, and the lobbyists when they come into those offices. I'm the face, along with my coworker. In order to keep working legislative sessions and stay active in my union and, of course, my acting work, my husband and I have experienced a downfall in the film industry, so we've been driving Lyft as one of our sources of income. At first, I was like, what? Oh my gosh, I'm gonna do this in the rideshare business? But it was the best thing for me because A, I have a flexible schedule, and what I didn't see coming was that I got to talk to people, real people, and I got out of my bubble. Don't we all live in bubbles? Completely out of my bubble. I'm meeting real people from Albuquerque, people who don't have cars, so they're the most interesting. Some people have cars, and they're just picking them at the dealership or going to a medical facility. But I've met people who are going from their second job that day to their third. They're not even making ends meet. Every time I drive away, whether it's a kid who is suffering because their after-school program has been cut, people who are overcoming addiction, all of this, I've been able to see. I've done over 2.3 thousand rides in 8 months. I got to the legislative session, I wanted to tell my reps, this is what we gotta work on. You have to see this, you have to come in my car. And then I realized after session that I wanna run. I have to help too. I gotta be a part of this. I wanna be a part of this. So I'm gonna just tell you some of my priorities. Okay. Healthcare that works for everyone. My husband and I just lost our medical insurance because there's not enough work. That's how unions work. Okay. But we don't qualify for anything right now. That wouldn't be way out of our budget and affordability. So I want to defend the healthcare affordability fund for every session, push to expand its income threshold so fewer people lose coverage, and build insurance cooperatives for the self-employed workers. The current system leaves us behind. Strong public schools, of course. Building on Rio Rancho's, because I have to go work on my district, $100 million in school improvements. We're going to close the learning gaps, expand pre-K, and retain great teachers. That is a huge problem. I'm being endorsed by the American Federation of Teachers, and they were telling me a lot about that. Invest in pathways like Rio Tech, which is coming, that connect students directly from careers to college, which is really important in today's economy. Oh, if we can do this one, real affordability for families. I'm going to look seriously into how current zoning throughout the state is placing barriers on affordable housing opportunities, access and education training for living wage jobs, supporting small business owners, and making sure that our community members retain their much-needed food assistance and utility assistance when the federal government is trying to take that away. Growth, water, and infrastructure. I'm going to ensure that New Mexico's $1.5 million transportation budget reaches every neighborhood equitably, building resilient infrastructure for a growing state, and of course, fully funding the 50-year water action plan. Very important everywhere. So my closing is, as you know, I'm not a career politician. I'm definitely a neighbor, a legislative aide, a friend, a fellow advocate. But I'm ready to get to work, and I feel like I can make a difference. Thank you. Thanks for having me here today, and I want to take some questions if you all have some, but I have to tell you that we do need help. Here's our QR code. If anyone can spread the love a little bit to my campaign, that would be amazing. $20, anything you can, or if you want to volunteer and help us in the field. Oh, can you put the QR code back up? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Elise, I have a question.
Sure.
Actually.
Is it over here? Okay. I'm sorry.
It's from back here. Yes.
I'm also losing my
hiding
hearing.
from you. I'm hiding from you. So tell us a little bit about who is now representing House District 23.
Oh, Alan Martinez.
And tell us about him.
Oh, well, I don't know how much I can tell you about, to be honest. I've been purposely.
No, I understand that.
I know he's the minority whip. Yeah, he's the minority whip, of course. And he's been in, I guess, 2 terms now, at least since 2020. And from what I understand, that he's actually voted against really hard things. That he's voted against SNAP benefits. A lot of the things a lot of things that we would agree with that to keep. He's very conservative, and for the Republican Party. There's a lot I need to learn about Alan, but he's not on our side. He's not for us. As a matter of fact, honestly, if you're a Republican at all, that's how I think, to be honest. But
So is he a Republican or Democrat?
Oh, no, he's a Republican.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. Yes.
Okay, so you're.
I assumed you all knew that.
Okay.
So
Do you have a candidate, an opponent in the primary?
No, I do not.
Okay, great.
Not.
That's what I wanted.
It's just me and Alan against each other.
Great. That's what I didn't understand that. Thank you.
No. Okay. Sorry, it took me a minute to get there to answer that question. Yeah. Yeah, it is good. Yes. There's definitely the water. They're very concerned. I'm always sneaking out on Nextdoor, so I know this answer to this question. Oh, I have to repeat the question. Okay, yes. The question was, what is the main concern in House District 23 because it is a very red, or 50% red anyway. What are the main concerns I'm seeing with the constituents out there? There's 3 things that come to mind, and that's not, water definitely, is the overpopulation. They're constructing a lot. So that gets related to the water. 2, public safety, constantly. There's some comments I've seen online when people are not understanding literally what, that they think that the affordable housing that's going up, which we're all not really clear how affordable it's going to be, but they're almost like saying that they think it's going to be like in the projects, the way they're talking, like it's going to bring crime, even though there's a sheriff's office right there and a prison right across the street. So that's very, there's that. These are some of the people that are talking like this. Obviously, we did lose the race, unfortunately. I love Alex. One of the things that came up with that, I'm not going to talk about it really at this point in my campaign, but it's immigration, and they were very concerned in her race about that bringing, so it's a thing. And it is very conservative. But the truth is like we all care about public safety. And I'm a small business owner. I have a lot in common with them. We also have a beautiful home, and we live there. So I want to try to find the common ground, and that's my approach. I really don't want to pin myself against my opponent, and I don't think he does either, which hopefully it won't get that nasty. We'll see, right, and we'll respond as we need to. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. And one more comment.
No, I'm the campaign manager. So yes, Alex Pallon did lose, and it is the saddest loss that I've seen in a long time. Because can we give hands for Alex? If you're listening on recording, she's incredible. They did lose, but this district in House District 23 is winnable. Okay, we've done a lot of field strategy work on this. They're one of the top priorities in the House caucus, so they're getting tons of support from the Speaker's office and beyond. But we cannot do it without you. So if you have not pulled your phone out yet and scanned that little QR code, even $5 will help, because we're just getting started and it's going to take a lot to flip Rio Rancho blue. Raise your hand if you want Rio Rancho to finally be blue. Then put your hand with your phone in your hand and then raise your hand and do it again. All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Charla. We wish you all the luck, Elise. And we will do everything we can. If you need canvassers or people to knock doors, let us know. Yeah. Okay. We're loading something. Huh. Okay, I'll take that. And can I keep the question?
Okay, so would Amanda and Catherine come up so we can start the forum? So there you are. You pick the right side, Catherine. This is easier, this side, to get through the curtain than this side. So you made the right decision. It's the very good. So yeah. So how would you two like to do it? Would you like to sit in the chairs with them? Okay, fine. That's okay. Hello, hello. Okay. Yep, this works.
Good job.
All right. So thank you all for coming. So let me review what we're going to do today. Okay, so we understand the ground rules. You'll each have a 3-minute opening statement. All right. And then you'll have 3 minutes for answer each question. You will see Michelle down there with a bright 3 there, so she will be the timekeeper. And then at the end, there'll be a 3-minute time for closing statements by each of you. We will rotate who goes first, okay? As we talked about, this is being recorded, and it will be posted on our YouTube channel and referenced on our website. So if you can let your supporters know where it is, and people here can watch it again, or let friends know that that's where it is. Okay? Is that clear? Okay. Good. Okay. So let me have. Yeah, I know. I got it. Thank you. I understand. So, Catherine, since you're first with me, you can make your opening statement, okay? Yes.
All right, I'm ready. Thank you. I'm Catherine Clark. I'm the Santa Fe County Clerk running for Secretary of State. Thank you so much for having both of us. A little bit about me. I was born in an Air Force family. I was born in Germany, lived in Spain at the time of Franco, and we definitely feel like we are heading back to what it felt like at a time in which authoritarianism was taking over. It is a familiar feeling, and it is not a good feeling. It's something we have to fight back. You know, my mother actually moved out of her house when she was 16 years old because she grew up in an abusive family, and taught me a lot about toughness. And she was always the person who told me to stand up to people. You know, when I was in high school, you know, it was a time, it was in the 90s, and they, you know, I was on the dance committee, and I just thought, I just want to make dances. And the parents and students said they didn't want to have same-sex students going to prom. And it was she who taught me to stand up. You have to be the first to stand up for people if that is what you believe in. And we were able to make sure that that administration allowed same-sex couples to go to prom. And I know that seems very silly, but that was an important moment in my life in which I decided that I am going to do this work, and I'm going to make sure that every voice is heard. So when I went to Berkeley, I was actually a little disappointed that you had to schedule your protests. And I started getting really, yes, you had to schedule them. And that just wasn't tough enough for me. So I went out and I started working campaigns, and I really saw the difference in elections when the county clerk or the election official implemented the law or the rules, because the law and the rules are the same, but it's where implementation makes all the difference, right? That is the place in which people get to vote and everyone gets to vote, or the place in which people don't get to vote because that, for instance, the Alameda County Clerk forgot to register all the voters, forgot to make sure there was enough provisional ballots. That was the moment in which I realized that the person who's running elections is the person who allows everyone to have a voice. And that is what I'm fighting for, because right now Donald Trump is trying to make sure that we do not have a voice. He is trying to pass executive orders. I'm part of a group of local election officials who sued him in court and were able to push back that executive order. I'm also the vice chair of the election subcommittee of NACO, which is a bipartisan committee, and we are in the Republican offices. I was there 3 weeks ago, making sure we shored up the 2 Republican votes we had so that the SAVE Act will not continue. I've won 13 national awards. I'm the only person in the state who has both the national and the state election administration certification because I take this job very, very seriously. And when I say that we have Maggie Toulouse-Oliver to thank for what an amazing job that she has done, she is the person that I emulate, and I want to be the next Maggie Toulouse-Oliver, and I want to make sure that we defend our elections, expand access to the ballot, democratize elections, get dark money out of our elections, and make sure the Secretaries of State office represents everyone in New Mexico. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Amanda.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Lopez-Askin, and I am very proud to serve my community as a Doña Ana County Clerk in southern New Mexico. A little bit about me and how I got to be in this literal seat. I actually was born and raised in southern New Mexico. I always say I'm a daughter of Doña Ana, and I'm very proud of my beautiful, vibrant borderlands. My mom grew up in an area of the state where you were corporally punished for speaking Spanish, was very segregated. She moved to Las Cruces and became a great voting advocate. You wouldn't think that would be the case. We grew up with a lot of housing insecurity, which included at least twice that I remember being homeless. We eventually got housing, which was great, but a lot of my childhood was spent under wet towels as air conditioning at night. And I say that because I want to contrast that with what I did have, which is an amazing, I won the lottery when it comes to mothers. And so what she did for me was always say what we called the 4 Bs, which told me I was bold, I was beautiful, I was brave, and I was brilliant. And I've tried to live up to those 4 things every single day. And hopefully most of the time I succeed, but you know, I'm also human. I went to work in the helping field. That means that I got a master's degree in marriage and family therapy. I worked with young people, mainly suicide prevention, advocacy, policy writing, treatment foster care. I was also a foster parent myself for 3 years, the hardest job I ever had. I became clerk in 2018 during an appointment. At that point, I had gotten my PhD in 2016, and when I did that, I will tell you, 4 things were going on. I got my PhD, I worked full-time, I served on the Board of Regents, and I had my first and only child who's sitting over here in the front row. So that just goes to show you that I am determined. What also means is that when I'm dug in, I'm dug in. And what I will tell you is I have been dealing with election deniers since 2018 every single day. They are coming for us more and more, and I have dealt with whatever you think it comes with that, which includes doxing, harassment, threats to the FBI, all of those things. By any measure, I am the most qualified candidate to be Secretary of State. I have run 12 elections. I'm starting my 8th year in the second most populous county that has the most contentious elections. I'm proud to include some of the endorsements that I've gotten even in the last few weeks. One of them is Planned Parenthood. Another one is the Sierra Club, Vote Mama, Voter Protection Project, as well as the Okewenge Tribe. There's a host of folks on the website, my website. Feel free to touch base with that. But also, I have been endorsed by Senator Heinrich, Gabe Vasquez, as well as Xochitl Small. So my name is Amanda Lopez-Askin. My name is Dr. Amanda Lopez-Askin, and I want to be your next Secretary of State. Thank you.
Okay, the first question is a fairly long one. So, and if you want to turn around and look so you can read, and Amanda, you'll be answering this question first. One of the last bills that Governor Lujan Grisham signed this year was SB 264, which prohibits armed federal agents from intimidating polling places in New Mexico. The Indivisible statewide worked hard for the passage of this bill. The organization of all county clerks in New Mexico, called, quote, the affiliate, voted on whether or not to endorse SB 264, and nearly all clerks voted no. The Santa Fe clerk and one other abstained. The Doñana clerk was the one of the two who voted yes. Please help Indivisible and Albuquerque understand your position. And we'd be clear, we're talking about SB 264, not 261. Okay, Amanda?
Sure, and I'll start off with the distinction between 261 and 264. 261 basically eliminated all law enforcement, all firearms at every polling location, and just couldn't get the support. 264 was more of a compromise. And I'm from the borderlands. It's not hard to figure out exactly why I was so supportive of it. You know, I take my makeup off, put my hair in a bun, and I run errands when I'm cleaning, and I carry my passport. That is the reality of living in our southern New Mexico borderlands and all throughout New Mexico. So when the question came up whether I was going to support Senate Bill 264, I vetted it, I looked through it, I talked to several of my senators, and more importantly, I talked to my constituents. I had some of them call me. I reached out to some who were very active in the immigration community, and they implored me to support it. Now, I will tell you, it is not super fun to get called out by Senate leadership by name on the Senate floor because of my vote and my support of it. I have lost, frankly, several friends that are county clerks because they've not been happy with my vote. At the end of the day, I am accountable to Doñana County. I was elected by my community, and I could not support it. So moving forward, we'll see how it plays out, but I live also in a community that, if you've ever been to southern New Mexico, Chaparral, New Mexico, which is near Otero County, very rural. 1 year prior to me being clerk, there was very low turnout, one of the voting locations, and we couldn't figure out what was going on. Apparently they checked with the officials, everything was fine. And what we found out later was that there were Border Patrol agents that they weren't there to harass necessarily, but they were near the polling location doing drills and training. So the mere presence of them half a mile away was a deterrent to so many people who had every right to vote that it is outrageous. Everybody should be upset the idea that they would block us just because the color of our skin, or they would show up and question our citizenship. That is outrageous, and it was not difficult to support it when it came down to it. So thank you.
Catherine.
So the Bill 264 was about banning ICE in polling sites. It also actually makes a part of the law is that you could sue a county clerk if you felt that they were not, if they were cooperating too much with law enforcement. And that is one of the, I think a misunderstanding about that is one of the reasons why a lot of the clerks did not want to support it, because they feel genuinely under attack. As you know, running elections right now is quite difficult, and the county clerks feel very much under attack. If you are a Republican right now, a county clerk, you're being attacked by MAGA, but you can't necessarily win in some of these smaller counties. And there was genuinely a fear and concern. The reason why I abstained from the bill is actually Rena Sapansky and I had been talking about doing a bill similar to this, but the standard by which we wanted to hold ICE was mere presence. Right now, the boundary of the bill is within 50 and 100 feet, and that is just not good enough. And the reason why is that ICE can just sit outside of that boundary and intimidate everyone. There is a circuit case out of California that says mere presence could be the new standard by which we would consider voter intimidation, and that is the standard I wanted to be in the bill. And once I talked to Rena and Tara, they said, there's just not enough time to get it through, and we said, okay, great. Then fine, I will support it because I do want to make sure that we have something in place. But I did write a letter to ICE before this bill passed that essentially set that mere presence standard. So out of all the counties in New Mexico, Santa Fe County is the safest because my sheriff and I will consider mere presence of ICE to be absolutely unacceptable. And that is the boundary by which we are deciding that ICE cannot be in the polling sites. I do think that we are seeing Bannon and several others talk about ICE. The Democratic secretaries of state have sent a letter to the federal government. We've seen, actually, I'm part of a national, an election association as part of the Democratic county officials, and we have asked that our delegation be asking about what their plans are for ICE, because this is a serious concern that we will see an attempt to intimidate the polls. We will see them raid election offices trying to take their ballots. There are very serious concerns about what this administration is going to be doing to try to intimidate voters or to try to cast doubts on elections, because that is also how this administration is winning their arguments or trying to intimidate voters, is by saying you can't trust election officials because they're not running elections correctly. So that is sort of the story of 264. But I am strongly in support of course, making sure ICE is not in the ballot box. But I actually think that we should have gone further, and I'm hoping that next session we can make sure that we do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me see if I can get this to work. All right. It's not working. Why is that? That worked. There it goes. Question 2, and again, if you want to turn around. Public trust in elections has declined nationally. What is the single most important thing you would do as Secretary of State to rebuild or strengthen New Mexicans' confidence in the integrity of their election? Catherine.
So I think it's running high trust elections. It's running elections that finish on election night. We have a program called, because we know that when people have to wait for election results right after the polls close, we actually know that that is more impactful, based on multiple studies, that is more impactful than even if you get the answer right a few days later, people remember they had to wait. That is just how human beings work, and we need to follow the science, right? Have your election results start to post right after election day, right after the polling sites close, and then finish on election day. The second is that we need to build a generation of voters who understand that their vote's going to count, and then we need to pre-bunk misinformation. What we do in Santa Fe County is we run a Democracy 101 program, and our goal is to interact with every single student, whether they are this tall, where we have a kids voting program at some of our early voting sites, or we do Democracy 101, where we go into all the high schools and we pre-bunk mis and disinformation, and we set up those voters to know that whatever they're hearing in their chat rooms, whatever they're seeing on Snapchat is not true, and we're going to build a generation of voters who understand what their rights are, but also are not going to be dissuaded from going to the polls simply because they saw something on the internet. The next thing is that we're going to have to fight mis and disinformation. That's making sure we run PSA programs that pre-bunk and contradict all of the mis and disinformation we're seeing out there. It's making sure the legislatures, just like in my county, or Maggie has gotten from her legislature, money to make sure we're running PSAs about myth busting and making sure that people understand their rights to vote. Okay, what else? Just do a Secretary of State rebate strength? Okay. I also think that there is a real need for more transparency. When people are looking at the election results on election night, they may not understand what they're looking at. I think there is a lot of opportunity to do what we've done in Santa Fe County. It's things like how much time it takes to go through the polls. We have a turnout tracker on our election website that essentially says, this is how long each of the polling sites it is to vote, and so people know where they are going to go vote. There's also another turnout tracker that suggests, here's how many people have voted. So that way you know when you see the election results go up online, you know how many people voted, and it matches how many people were reporting. There's also another thing that I'm doing, and I know that Dr. Amanda Lopez Asquez is doing it as well, is putting our ballots online. So as soon as Canvass is over, people can then flip through our ballots, so that's a complete radical transparency. That is how I think we're going to get back to having people trust elections, is making sure we run high-trust elections, making sure we pre-bunk misinformation and have an anti-mis and disinformation campaign, but we also make sure that we're using tools that voters can use to understand the transparency around elections, and that is how we will win back the electorate. Thank you.
Thank you. Amanda.
Thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how I got to be county clerk in Doña Ana County. I earned my PhD in 2016, but after doing 4 years of research and thinking I wanted to be a researcher, I decided I didn't like it so much, but I finished it, and I continued to work in advocacy and mental health. The position of county clerk came open because the clerk left, resigned, and I put my name in the hat among 14 other folks, and I was selected. So 5 days into the 2018 election in Doña Ana County, which is a Xochitl Torres small Yvette Harrell race, 5 days in that election, I walked into it. And so what I will tell you is, after about 2 or 3 months of being under litigation, our ballots being impounded, and the narrative of something is amiss in elections, we knew that our election had integrity. We just didn't move as fast as we wanted to. I will also say that is when the harassment has begun. And so moving forward, I know it's going to continue. The next Secretary of State is going to need to be front and center and be ready on day one. It's not about what will I do. It's about what I have done for 8 years. I learned about elections. I was an academic at that point, and what I learned absolutely floored me. People asked me, I don't know how you do this, and I said, because they're wrong. It's that simple. We run amazing elections in New Mexico. We have been ranked #1 the past 4 years. I found out a few weeks ago our ranking dropped to 7, but that just means we got to work harder, because that means other states did. And so it's all about information, getting the idea that we run amazing elections in New Mexico, and they're not in the top 10 of many lists, but we are an election administration. Every single county clerk in our state does a great job. They're elected from their community, and they are invested in their elections. Beyond that, what I will say is I had one of the biggest election deniers in the country in my county. David Clements is his name, and he raised $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 off of the grift, and I'm featured prominently in many of his videos. His supporters, disciples, had to sign pledges where they pledged to disrupt county commission meetings and ask for my resignation, and they called me a Soros-funded baby killer. And they did this again and again, and we always wonder where the Soros money is, and that's kind of a joke. But what I will say is I started standing up to them every single meeting. Misinformation, oh, you need to go to paper ballots. We do have those. You need to have voter ID. We do have ID. You need to verify the machines. We do verify the disease. We have to fight back every single time we hear misinformation. You know, in my county, the last 8 years, we've had a student education. A senior does not leave any of our school districts without having talked to myself or somebody in my team. We have a myth versus fact on our website, and I combat misinformation anytime in a public setting that I am able to. So, thank you.
Thank you. Question 3, and Amanda, this will be yours. Since 2016, New Mexico is not generally viewed as a competitive state. In the last presidential election, New Mexico voters turnout lagged behind national averages by 4.5 percentage points. What can you do as Secretary of State to improve turnout, given our challenges of being a rural and poor state?
So I think that kind of dovetails into, the last question dovetailed into this and talking about voter education. But what does that really mean? I really believe that people closest to the problem and the pain are the ones with the solution. So I am asked continually, what do we do about youth? How do we get them to turn out? And so what I always say is we ask them, and then we do things that they do. I am very proud. We just had our 100th episode of our podcast, and we know that that's where young people are tuning into. We also have a YouTube page. We do outreach on Saturdays, evenings, weekends, and we ask them to be a part of elections in Doñana County. When I go to these schools, and there's 3 school districts, so it's time-consuming but so worth it. Not only do I notice that they're registering almost amazingly high as a DTS, or otherwise known as independent, because they don't like this party system. It's just, it's not for them. They don't like the infighting. So I think having discussions with them, but also asking them to work elections. They are eligible to work and become a poll worker. We call them junior election officials. What that means is not only will they make a good amount of money for the day, but they will also see the system at work, and they will be very reassured by what they find. I also know they're going to become voters. And so that in itself is a win. You know, in 2019, I started we have children that come with their parents to vote. We give them their own ballots. They are forced to take a coloring book that has outline pictures of myself, Maggie Toulouse-Oliver, and some of our team. But that has been successful, and we love to highlight that in our social medias. I also hired a 19-year-old Gen Zer to do our comms. And I know that that is impactful. We have some of the most views in the state connected to any of the voter information that comes out. I know they're watching and engaging with us. So we talk about how do you engage new voters? How do we increase turnout? We continue to tell truth to them about our elections. And we can't assume that they do not care. You can say a lot of things about young people. It's like saying parents don't care about their kids. They do care. They just don't feel invited to that table of democracy, right? And so we need to figure out how can we engage more? How can we welcome them more? And that means by encouraging them to get started in local politics. And again, offering that continual information that they crave, and also recognize that they have unprecedented access to information. I used to use an encyclopedia. That's not the case anymore. They're just one Google away from asking and getting all of the information they need. And so, education, reinforcement, support, asking them, I think that's really key to bring out not just young voters, but voters in general. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Well, I think I'm more of a data-driven person, and so I think the total, before automatic voter registration took effect, Doñana had 581 young people registered to vote, and Santa Fe County had 384. And that's really not a lot of people. And so we have to look at why people are not registering to vote. I think now that we have automatic voter registration, as soon as young people go into MVD at the age of 16, they're going to be automatically registered to vote. The challenge is how to get them to vote, right? And the reality is the people who are not voting are not necessarily young people. It's also tribal voters. It's also rural and poor people. It's people who do not necessarily have a car to drive to a polling site. It's people who don't necessarily have access to a traditional mailbox. One of the things that I would like to do as your Secretary of State is to overhaul the voter registration system. We've had it since about 2009, and it is really based on very old technology. One of the things that it does is something called a street file. So it's like these segments of street file. That means people who are unhoused. It means people who are tribal voters who do not have traditional addresses have a very hard time registering to vote. The other thing I would like to do is make sure that we're really reaching people where they are, and that is the fact that our current website, while it has lots of information, is actually really, really hard to utilize because it is not in what's called responsive design. 80% of people who are rural use their cell phone. This is their lifeline to the internet. And our current Secretary of State's website does not format and display correctly, so it is very hard to register to vote when you are a rural voter on our website, and that is something I would like to change, being a tech geek that I am. The other thing is I think that there should be an app. And the app can be in your wallet, just like a voter information card, just like your driver's license now. And New Mexico does something that's really, really cool. We put a driver's license that's digital and we talk about young people. They want a digital driver's license. They want digital everything. They don't want to have to talk to humans. They just want to make it easy, right? And what they want is a digital driver's license, and they also want a digital voter information card. Now, wouldn't that be wonderful and powerful if we could then text them at the beginning of an election and say, hey, you haven't made a voter plan yet. What's it going to be? I think we can drive out tons of turnout if we do things which is modernize the infrastructure that's supporting elections. That's things like our voter file. That's making sure that every single polling site will never go down because of power, will never go out because of internet, right? Making sure that we democratize elections so that all the language that's on a ballot is not in lawyer speak, but is in everyday person speak. It's things like making sure there's an app that pushes voters to the polls and making it easy to vote. And it's also making sure that we get the money from our legislature to tell voters when it's time to vote, how to vote, right? These are the tools that we have in our toolbox because we are currently registering every single person. We're gonna have huge numbers of people registered. But getting them to turn out is where the data has to meet, you know, we have to make sure we're using the data to tell us how to get people to vote. Thank you.
Thank you. So Catherine, this is a kind of similar question, but a discussion of what any particular group of voter public that you feel is underrepresented and what will you do about it. So it's again a version of what you just talked about. First.
I get to go first. Okay. Got it. So what's really interesting about voter patterns, I mean, I'm a geek, so I did the data, and you know, I've heard a lot about how only, you know, white voters turn out more than Hispanic voters, and I did the data, and I found out that if you are in Mora County and you are in Rio Arriba County, you are a hardcore voter. You vote just as much as Santa Fe County, which is sort of has the stereotype of being white, but it's actually a majority BIPOC county. We have the highest turnout of tribal voting precincts probably in the country at 82%, right? We're very, very proud of that. So the reality is that if you are in Navajo Nation, that is the challenge that we see a lot, and we see low turnout, and that is because Navajo Nation suffers under the same challenges for any public services they're trying to get. They don't have traditional addresses, they don't have access to the postal service, the polling sites are few and far between. I mean, there is something that we talk about when we talk about equity, and it should be that what is the essential available voting space? And there is a metric that I've been working on with a couple of other county clerks across the country, but that is what we do, is where we measure the essential voting space. That's the space that is ADA compliant, that has power, that has adequate internet, that you could ostensibly use to vote. And you will see that it totally overlaps with communities that are underutilized, right? The access to the ballot is the same as access to anything else. And that is, we need to use that metric to tell our legislature where we need to put investment. That's investment in community centers, that's investment in school gyms, that's investment in firehouses, so that we can be assured that no matter where you live in New Mexico, you don't have to drive more than 20 minutes to get access to a ballot. The second thing is we really need to ramp up this wonderful thing called permanent absentee, right? That's where we send you a ballot every election, and that is a good way of making sure we close the gap for people who cannot go to a traditional polling site, right? We want people to use absentee, and we want to make sure we're pushing out people to use absentee. And then the next thing is we're going to have to, unfortunately, fight the Postal Service. Right now, Donald Trump's plan of modernizing the Postal Service has really impacted our rural areas. This country really believed in that everyone, in this democratic idea that everyone should be able to get the mail. And what we are seeing is that our rural communities are being deeply impacted by the changes to the Postal Service, and we need to meet with our federal delegation and insist that they push back on these changes that we're seeing. That is how we make sure we have access to mail and balloting. There's a resolution that myself and another Texan county clerk passed at National Association of Counties, where we are utilizing that as a tool to make sure we're hammering on the Postal Service. I will tell you, the deputy election director of elections at the Postal Service, when she sees me coming, she runs the other way because she knows Catherine's going to talk to her about the mail in New Mexico. So I really think that there are lots of things we can do, but really it's about equity. And unfortunately, when we see who has parity and who doesn't, it totally overlaps with how much money that community has and how much investment that community has made in certain neighborhoods. And that is what we need to change. Thank you.
Amanda.
So one of the things about our elections and voting is best practices are best practices. And so I don't disagree with anything my opponent has said, but what I will say is this. I always have to push back on the comparison between my county and Santa Fe County. Santa Fe has been very good to me. I love Santa Fe. Santa Fe is a snapshot of Santa Fe. It is not a snapshot of New Mexico. As somebody from southern New Mexico, I can tell you that the high turnout is not because we don't care. The high turnout, or the low turnout comparatively to Santa Fe, is not because we don't care. It's not because we're not invested in our community. There are factors that affect that. We have a higher racial minority population. We have a lower socioeconomic status. We have less access to things like transportation and information. And when we think about which population, I frankly, in a state that is a majority minority state, the idea that racial minorities and Latinos specifically are not participating at higher rates is something that I really believe we could connect with faith communities about. I think it is a moral obligation to vote in some ways because it's almost a sacrosanct right. And so when we think about who's underrepresented, it tends to be, I hate to say this, but kind of the average person, young people, rural people, LGBTQ folks. Those are the folks that are generally the most underrepresented. And I don't know if we can parse out who is what because there's so many intersectionalities between those groups. I do think, and will continue to say, as somebody who has a PhD in education, that education and reinforcing that and institutionalizing voting, and Senator Souls and I have talked about potentially having some kind of requirement connected to civics and voting that would be a graduation requirement for every single student that gets a high school diploma out of New Mexico. And we should start earlier. I have a 10-year-old, and she just happens to live with me, so she knows all the things, the parties. She has comments. She'll come home and say to me, Mom, so-and-so's parents voted for Trump. So at the end of the day, I think they're the ones that we need to look to, and they're the ones that are going to make the difference, but we have to meet them where they are. And part of that, again, is recognizing the needs that they have. Not everybody has, and doing everything we can to support them. So, again, I don't disagree with any of my opponents' ideas. Best practices nationally are best practices nationally, and we're all working on that. I was fortunate to be appointed to the only federal organization that supports election by our Secretary of State as a Democrat representing New Mexico. And this is something that I'm proud of, particularly because we are going to have a direct say in what they take back to Congress. So thank you.
Thank you. So, Amanda, this is for you. And there was a controversy up in Santa Fe recently, Catherine, which you are both are well aware of releasing some electoral results before the polls closed. So I have a separate question for each of you. So Amanda, you said you personally saw the results for the Santa Fe County on public-facing websites. Where was that? Could you tell us, what you saw and where you saw
Sure.
it? Yeah.
If I could give you some context to how I was involved in that story, that's always very
Sure.
helpful. So I received a call from the reporter who eventually wrote the story, who left out the context that I think is helpful for the average person reading it to understand. Received a call. I was asked about the questions about the early release of results. Now, I know that we would never upload I know that every county clerk across the state, none of us would ever release the results before 7. It is just not done. It is something that could affect voter turnout and affect literally within, if you see results beforehand, you think, why would I bother? Having said that, the question to me was, what do you have to say about this? What do you have to say about these allegations against the Santa Fe County clerk, that the reason that she's doing it is because she wants to be first, and it's something that she's going to use on her stump, and that she's going to talk about that. But actually the accusation is that she's releasing them early. And what I said was, I don't have a comment. This doesn't involve my county. That is between the county clerk in Santa Fe and her constituents. But then he said to me, well, she's alleging and saying that if anybody should look at anything, it should be at the slow reporting of Doña Ana County that 75% of the time has late results. So that's when I responded. And what I will say is I spoke truth. I saw what I saw. But I will also say that this is between her and her constituents, and I will let the process of investigation play out. It is still ongoing, and so I'm going to step out of that. I probably shouldn't even be involved in this story, but when you go after my county and you start questioning my team, my community, the integrity that we have connected to elections, I have to respond, and that is what I did at that time. So,
Thank you. So, the Santa Fe, New Mexico report that your own office documentation states that no one knows the total votes until after the polls close at 7, because absentee ballots can be dropped at polling places until the same deadlines. So the results you uploaded at 6:49, how can they be accurate and complete? And what does uploading incomplete results before the polls close due to public confidence in the count?
Right, and I think that's a misunderstanding about how elections work. So there is a website that the Secretary of State runs, and they are the one who release results. So they have a pretty good system. Maggie has been doing this for a long time, and the results turn on at 7:01, and then the first push happens at 7:06, and that's every 5 minutes. So we get about 95% of our absentee ballots back before Election Day because we do a PSA program to tell people to don't mail your ballots. We also, about 78% of our voters are voting absentee and early. So when you are an election official, you can actually start printing your early voting and absentee tapes starting at 9 a.m. on Election Day. And so your absentee presiding judge actually starts printing the early voting tapes. And that's because we run essentially 3 different elections during election period. We run the absentee election, we run the early voting election, right? And the early voting stops on Saturday before Election Day, and then we run an Election Day election. So those tabulators are separate. So when you are releasing results, which is best practice, right after the polls close, you are releasing absentee, whatever you've gotten up until that point, you're releasing early voting data, and then as the presiding judges reconcile after the polls have closed, they are driving their chips and their ballots back to the Central's command. Essentially, we're making sure that that data is correct, and then we keep on pushing up. So clerks, as we're going through election night, keep on uploading more and more of their ballots. We just happen to be able to, in Santa Fe County, upload about 95% of our absentee vote because very few people are actually returning their ballots on Election Day. We have less than 200 that are returned on Election Day at the various polling sites from across across our county, as well as from the mail. So we are able to release the majority of our vote, and then as we get the trickling in, right, the next data push, we just push it out. So it's not a complete absentee, but it's most. And then as election night goes on, we're able to finish. And that's one of the reasons we're very proud in Santa Fe County is because you have to have all of your ballots back in order to be able to run a ranked choice voting race. And in the fall, we were able to show on live television, round by round at 10 o'clock, who was the winner of that mayoral race, right? And people could see it as we were seeing it. We did not know the results before we started running that on live television, but it enabled us to be radically transparent and enabled us actually to convince people who were kind of against ranked choice voting that, wow, this is instant runoff. I get it now. And they started to say that they supported it. So this is kind of what's been going on, is sort of a misunderstanding of how the data works, but essentially Maggie would never release results before 7 o'clock, and she is the one who controls the website, and it's something she used to do. She used to try to get the results out quickly because she understood if people have to wait more than 14 minutes after the polls close, they start to doubt the election process. So we are following best practice to make sure we have a large drop of data right after the polls close, and then the election day sites trickle in as the night goes on. That's essentially how it works. So thank you.
Thank you. Question 6 is, New Mexico has been deemed #1, as we talked about, in voter security over all of the states. So, Catherine, what additional measures will you do to use to protect the integrity of the vote and ensure the public our voting procedures are fair, complete, and honest?
Well, I sit on the EI-ISAC, which is the consortium between, it's an elected position from 1,300 local election officials that appointed me with some other Secretary of State to basically be the watchdog of our elections. They are the cybersecurity defenders of our elections. And what we are concerned about right now is the fact that we are at war with Iran, And they are very modern. You can see the PSAs using Legos, but they are also gearing up to attack our elections, right? So we know that North Korea, Russia, Iran, whenever there is chaos, let's say, across the globe, our elections are put in danger. So we are very closely looking at our elections to make sure that we are protecting our elections. EI-ISAC had all of its funding cut last year by Donald Trump, and we've been like clawing back our funding to make sure that we can do a national job of protecting our elections. And we launched a sit room, which actually helps all of the secretaries of state and county clerks sit in a situation room and really make sure we're monitoring election threats. I think really, mis and disinformation is a huge problem. I always tell my presiding judges, you will see misinformation on the internet before you have a chance to call me to tell me what happened at a polling site. So we're going to have to get a better job of making sure we're protecting elections by having better PSAs in advance. Like, for instance, this next election, we're going to have 3 write-in candidates for the Republican primary ballot. And that requires, because only 150 ballots can go in the diverter, it means we're going to be at the polling sites pulling out ballots from the machines every 150 Republican votes, essentially, potentially. We're going to have to get ahead of what the mis and disinformation is going to be around that, because we know that Republicans or people who are election deniers are going to say we're doing something that's hinky, and we're not. We're doing what we need to do to make sure that the machines don't jam, because the Republicans couldn't get it together enough, essentially, to be able to do a normal candidate statewide. But reality is that we have to get ahead of it, and we are trying to formulate a plan. But essentially, mis and disinformation is making sure we have cybersecurity. It's making sure we're doing essentially what we did in Santa Fe County, which was a voter integrity project. We won a national award for it. But we actually have a device that sits on the tabulator, between the tabulator and its plug, and it tells us when the polling site has gone down. And that gives us enough time to respond quickly to make sure that we are bringing either a battery, or we're calling our power company to tell them we need to get our power back on, so that we can make sure we protect the right to vote and protect the integrity of the election. These are sort of all the ways in which we are working really hard to, essentially in Santa Fe County, to try to make sure we bring those programs to the Secretary of State's office. And then finally, oh, I guess I'm running out of time. Sorry. I could talk about this forever.
Thank you. Amanda?
Let me make sure.
Yeah. That's why we have them up, so you have a chance to read.
So, in protecting the integrity of our vote, I think about, I'll tell you a quick story in Doña Ana County. In 2019, I was tasked with running the first ranked choice voting election, as well as the first consolidated election. So all the school boards, all the municipalities, they were all rolled into one, which is great, because that institutionalizes November. As every November, like clockwork, we have an election in New Mexico. We need to shout that from the rooftops continually. I definitely, so it was a very hard time. I'd only been in the job a year. And the absentee board, who manages the absentee process, had 83 ballots that did not have a numeric on the exterior of the envelope. If you have one, you have to fill out your zip code, your year of birth. But they had the signatures. At the time, the law said what was required was a signature. And so I knew we had the signatures, but I didn't want the Republicans to get mad at me, because I'd been taking heat from them for about a year. And so I said to my team, let's go call down these voters that need these numerics. And they did. They went back. I said, okay, it was 83 people they had to call to see if they could come cure the ballot. They had until the following Friday. And she comes back, and the very first thing she tells me is, I called the first voter, and she said they can't come in. It was a couple. And I said, well, why? They have until X day. Is it a transportation issue? There's some services that'll bring them. It's this whole thing. And she said, no, he's on hospice. He's on hospice in the south of our county. So, this is a person who took the time to request an absentee ballot for a local election, knowing that it was going to be his last vote, and he did everything right. They left the numerics off. The law didn't require that, but I knew what was going to happen. I knew I was going to get a lot of heat, and I didn't want to deal with that. And in that moment, I said, count their vote. And the Republican Party went after me, screamed. They said, we're going to sue you, and they did. So when we talk about protecting the integrity of elections, that means we count every vote and we step in front of situations that aren't ideal. It is never easy to be a county clerk, but I will tell you, you have to rise to the occasion when there are difficult things, whether you like it or not. This last election, we had two things that were unprecedented. We had a write-in candidate for ranked choice voting, only the second time in the country. We also had our brand new absentee sorting machine crash. So we had 4,000 pending absentee ballots that we received in the last few days. What do? You count all the ballots, and if it takes till the next day, then it takes the next day. And I'm always for accuracy over expediency. So having said that, we need more funding. We absolutely need more advocacy. We were cut 25% this last session. We were able to get up 1.5 million short. We still need money. So what I will tell you is protecting it all has to do with how we're able to support county clerks and all the things they do, including the cybersecurity, including the training, including the support for the clerks, including the supplies, including all the equipment, having it new, as updated as you can possibly have it. So, sorry, I've gone on, but thank you.
So, Amanda, it's your time to go for the closing statement first. Okay, so go ahead.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you all so much for having this tonight. I said to somebody earlier, I've said it to a couple of people, it was very inspiring from southern New Mexico to look at your No Kings rally. When I first saw the photos, you all are hope. There's nothing that sounds better to me these days than the sound of whistles, and whenever I'm feeling real blue, I head to YouTube and look at the Republican town halls. Those give me hope. The average person did not sign up for what's going on right now, regardless of how they voted. And so seeing you all come together from southern New Mexico and our borderlands, knowing that you have our back, and that as a state, we collectively are supporting basically humanity. And so having said that, we are in a street fight for our democracy. And it is at this point, I am the street fighter, that day one, I will be able to handle what comes because I've had to do it for 8 years. It has not been easy. It has come at a personal cost in a lot of ways, but it now becomes my life work because my daughter will have the same, if not more, rights than I do. And I will do everything I can to stand in front of that every day to make sure that happens for her, and not just for her, but for your grandchildren, your kids, all of them. And so when we talk about it being a street fight for our democracy, bravery, when I talked about the things that my mom taught me, bravery is not the idea of not having fear. It's the idea of fighting through that fear. It is never easy to be a county clerk, but how you rise to the occasion, what you take on, the beating you're willing to take because you know what you're doing is right, are key qualities in the next Secretary of State. The way I grew up was difficult, but it taught me resilience. The way I grew up was not ideal, but it taught me that I can do it, and I will settle in, and if I have a goal in mind, I will. My goal is to be Secretary of State because I know I'm the most experienced and qualified candidate, and that I've spent my life in public service, and this would be the next continuation of that. My name is Dr. Amanda Lopez-Askin, and I want to be your next Secretary of State. Thank you all so much for being here.
Catherine.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure. I think that it's always difficult to do a summary because I'm such a nerd and I talk a lot about all the geeky and wonderful things I want to do, and it's hard to summarize that into one idea or one thing. But I really think that there is kind of a story about how I got to being really interested in making sure that democracy works for everyone. And that is when I was a union member. I'm a 5th generation union member. My mom taught me that you join your union, right? You make sure that your union has representation. You become the union steward if no one else is willing to do it. And in my department, I was no one else wanted to do it, and I became the union steward. And they actually, it was an economic downturn, similar to what we're seeing now, right? Where people are really having a hard time, right? And so they're trying to find ways of cutting costs. We're seeing people having a harder and harder time finding housing. We're seeing people having a harder and harder time if they're being laid off to get a job, right? It feels very familiar to 2008. And the panic that people have, and perhaps people are not voting the way we would like because they're being sold a bill of goods about that if you're trans or if you're an immigrant, somehow you're the problem. And I think that what we saw in 2008 is 3 people got fired, and it was my job as the steward to make sure that we organized, right? And we made sure we got out on the chancellor's lawn and we told him that you need to give these jobs back. And we were able to get those jobs back. And what that taught me is that you have to lead by being in front, right? You have to make sure that you are the person who's willing to stand up first and other people will follow you. And Donald Trump is someone who is a bully. He is used to intimidating people. He is used to literally putting up pictures of Jesus. He is used to actually calling out the Pope, surprisingly, and saying and threatening a whole country and threatening to basically raze them to the ground. It is horrifying. This is the era we're in, and we need to make sure that we are doing everything we can to defend democracy. And the only way to do that is to elect people who will lead from the front. That is, people who are willing to stand up first, who are willing to do things that show a lot of accomplishment, that are trying to make sure we're not doing the status quo. Donald Trump got elected in the status quo. We need to make sure we are doing things differently, fighting for our values, things like universal health care, making sure that we are getting dark money out of elections, making sure that everybody knows their vote will count, and that this office represents everyone, not just the people who have power, not just the people who have influence. That's why I'm so thrilled to be endorsed by Antoinette Cedillo-Lopez, Day Hoffman V. Hill, Action 314, AFSCME, because I really think they believe that I want to represent the little guy. I want to make sure that everyone feels equal in the Secretary of State's office. I want to make sure that every New Mexican knows their voice will be heard, and I will lead from the front. Thank you very much.
I would like to thank both of you for coming up and coming down, depending on which way you came.
Appreciate it.
And thank you so much. I assume if you have questions, they will be glad to answer them. And I'd like to thank Michelle Benton for handling the timekeeping. We will see you all next week.